about our consortium. We are a not-for-profit organization. We were established back in 2017 by a woman named Suzanne West. Oh, sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here. And she was the founder of our kind of group and organization and came up with the idea for a consortium. And ever since, we've been keeping it going to keep her legacy. Some of the things that we do a lot of advocacy. We do events, education, free webinars, like what you're seeing right here. We host in-person events as well. We're looking forward to starting some of those up in the next 6 to 8 months, hopefully. And between our magazine, we're putting out content on social media all the time. So we're a great resource if you're interested in learning more about what this technology is and what it can do. And of course, as a not-for-profit, we couldn't do what we do without all of our incredible members. So to everyone who's sitting on the screen, a lot of these companies have been with us since day one, supporting our organization. We are a group of volunteers. So we have about 30 volunteers that support this organization right now. And a lot of the volunteers also come through our membership pool. We love it if you engage with us. There will be a Q&A period. So if you do have any questions, please just type them in the Q&A spot. Happy to get to all of those. We also love when you engage with us. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. So if you guys want to engage, follow us for more content. You can sign up for our newsletter, gain access to our awesome magazine. So we started in January this year, and we put out at the first of every single month. Again, it's free. And what we do is we do a lot of research on what are some really interesting topics in the space that we feel like people would want to learn more of. So if you just visit our website at canadablockchain.ca, on our landing page, you'll be able to see our magazine, and you'll be able to see all of our past issues and our current one. We just came out with one on the US infrastructure bill that's been a very hot topic within the blockchain cryptocurrency community. This is not moving. Okay, so a little bit of our learning overview for today. So we're going to talk a little bit about an introduction to blockchains, some of the challenges that they're having for business growth, some of the applications and sectors that it fits really well in, industry case studies. I really like this one because it helps people kind of understand, like, where is blockchain actually applicable, what companies are using it, how are they utilizing it, what does it mean? So it's really good to go through those, some of the opportunities that are coming from it, of course, the obstacles, and then future developments that are happening in the space. So again, if you have any questions, you can type them in the Q&A spot at any time, and I'll definitely get to them. So introductions to blockchains. So this is going to be the basis of blockchains, how it works, some of the core benefits, and why it's becoming this disruptive force for the different industry sectors. So at the end of the day, so what is a blockchain? I know a lot of people are hearing this like really crazy buzzword, blockchain, 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 and it kind of gets confusing. Like, what is it? You start trying to understand online. A lot of people lump cryptocurrency in with blockchain, and it's difficult to kind of separate the actual technology from the financial services side of things. So what we really focus on here is enterprise level blockchain, and we're going to explain this technology. So it's basically a database at the end of the day, and it's a series of time-stamped pieces of data that are managed by a cluster of computers. And there's different ways of having these blockchains. So you can have decentralized, which would be the equivalency of like Bitcoin's blockchain. Every single person has access to this blockchain. Every single person can see every single transaction record throughout its entire history. You can download that onto your computer, and it's managed by computers all over the world. So all of these different computers are for solving these interesting functional equations, and that is confirming transactions. So that would be the more decentralized proof of work Bitcoin blockchain. And then you can have more centralized ones or permission-based ones, restricted ones, so that if you have a blockchain operating within your business, you're only sharing data with people that you've allowed to see that data. You don't have to show every single thing to every person. So that's really, really important. And then, so each of these blocks is secured and bound to each other using cryptography. So if you haven't heard the term cryptography before, it's you've heard probably of encryption, and it's just a way of saying like it's very, very secure. So Bitcoin's blockchain uses what's called SHA-256, which is basically like military grade level encryption. And what happens is when they put this block of data in and they confirm these transactions, it comes out with this really unique digital fingerprint. And that unique digital fingerprint is put into the subsequent block of data. So it forms this unbroken chain that is very, very immutable. Blockchains, when they're public, they can also be in what's considered a consensus state on the network and maintained and run by nodes where anyone who chooses to participate, or you can have them private and requiring permission to access, as we've talked about. So some of the key things about blockchain: one, decentralized. You can have that where there's no single point of authority. No individual person can change, manipulate, alter the blockchain. Everyone has complete record and complete transparency of everything that's ever happened. And then immutable, again, based on using SHA-256 and that military grade level encryption, like proof of work blockchains. You can't actually go in and alter any of the blocks of data because of that unique digital fingerprint. If it doesn't match the subsequent block of data, it will be considered, miss or not accurate information, and it won't be added into that blockchain database. So that's part of that immutability. And then the transparency, just the fact that everyone can see it at any given time, right? As long as it's like a decentralized open source platform. So that's a little bit about blockchains. End of the day, they're a database. They're not magical. They are not going to solve for every single business problem, but they are a way of being able to share data amongst multiple counterparties in a very transparent manner. And they are areas where they can create efficiencies in various businesses. And we'll get into those case studies in a bit. So where do they actually supply business value? So successful use cases for blockchain applications often result in the three benefits that you're seeing on your computer screen here. So one of them would be traceability. And then we have transactions, and then we have trustlessness. So in terms of traceability, the nice thing about blockchains is any piece of information that's recorded on a blockchain, whether it's like placement of a physical object, can almost instantaneously be traced back to a point of origin or proof of provenance. There's really good case studies in this for, say, like in the agricultural space. If you want to know exactly, the cow that you're eating, where did it come from? Where was it birthed? What was its, medical history records, things like that. You're able to pull that up, all those individual pieces of data at any given point. In terms of transactions, blockchain technology has an application called smart contracts, if you've heard of those. And basically, those are programmed self-executing agreements that are based on business logic. They help reduce things like costly disputes and eliminate the need for intermediaries. And then you have that trustlessness. So when they talk about trustlessness, it eliminates the need for two individuals to have to trust each other. You're not having to trust what the other person is saying to you. It creates, you're trusting the data that's being put into there. So it eliminates the need for kind of like disputes if you can, prove what you have based on the data, based on, evidence. You don't need to actually trust what the person has to say. So all parties also have access to the same data, and the information can be verified and streamlined for businesses. So those are some of the really the high level nice points about utilizing blockchain for your business. So this is a study I really like that's been done by Deloitte, and they talked about early adopters to the technology. So a lot of investment is actually going into the technology by a lot of major companies. So when Deloitte put this out, they put it out to a lot of businesses all across the country, small, medium, large size, and tried to learn kind of what's their interest. 95% all came back with they're exploring it. And the investment could look like taking a class or bringing in a consultant, putting into research and development. And then deployment. So 34% of firms were actively rolling out blockchain applications. So we have firms that just in Canada alone, like you have Guild One rolling out blockchain-based applications. You have TrustBix with agricultural-based applications. You have a lot of software development companies, DLT Labs that work with Walmart. So a lot of deployment's been happening. And then another great one is a lot of consortiums, which are really great because it allows for like a neutral ground from multiple parties to come to the table and kind of learn, best practices. What are people doing? What kind of technologies are they using? What software platforms? How are they implementing it into their business, et cetera. And then they said 74% of the executive level reported that their organization saw a really compelling case for using blockchain technology. And a lot of it had to do with being able to create better efficiency and remove like redundancies. And a fair bit actually included like data entry, being able to eliminate the need for very redundant data entry. So let's talk about some of the challenges to business growth. So this would talk about kind of like the operational regulatory factors that are limiting the growth to Canadian businesses and reducing corporate profitability. So some of the economic headwinds, Canada is always held in a pretty excellent regard as a very safe jurisdiction doing business in. However, we have a lot of very, very high standards and a high cost of living, especially considering the environmental regulations, and it's definitely a very dominant resource sector. They pose challenges. So in terms like right now, I believe they passed a bill saying their carbon tax is not unconstitutional, and the carbon tax is going to be highly increased, which means, just your cost of goods and food and transportation, and companies that are emitting, carbon as their emissions are going to be taxed higher. So that's definitely one of the kind of burdens that we see there. We also have a declining GDP growth, and slowing productivity are just two of the ways in which the country's high cost of doing business are starting to manifest. And then we have emerging technologies like blockchains that are offering solutions for many of Canada's most pressing business issues. So according to the Government of Canada's digital strategy, the digitization of traditional industries like agriculture, oil and gas, and manufacturing are a very core priority, and blockchain has the opportunity to help and support in all of those business practices. So all economic sectors pretty much are going digital, and the digitalization is a tactic that can help differentiate Canada, and bold adoption of this digital platform will help enable us to like leapfrog above other countries. So countries like right now, Canada is actually considered very low on the scale in terms of digital technology adoption as well as usage. Like we lag behind Asia, the UK, the EU, so Europe, as well as the United States in terms of that. One thing COVID has done for us is actually moved us probably, they said, 5 years ahead in technology adoption in just a 4-month period of time. So many people started using more digitized online platforms. We saw a lot of decentralization in terms of being able to work from home and still be able to perform optimally at work. And that took a lot of software, and a lot of platforms like Zoom and Google actually had to really create, like they actually had to go in and start fixing up some of their platforms because they weren't used to such incredible amount of usage as we've seen over the last 18 months. But it definitely created like a more interconnected world, that's for sure. So other things that blockchain can help solve for, and this one's really interesting. So when it talks about trade disputes, if you guys remember a few years ago, we had China actually declining taking our pork products and some other stuff, and canola as well. And it was based on the fact that there was an issue with some of the veterinary records that were coming up from our pork products. So they said, nope, we're not taking this anymore. So one of the things that blockchain technology can actually help solve for is showing not just that proof of provenance and the origin of the animal, but being able to put into an immutable digital ledger system the veterinary records, all the information about that animal, other things that can prove with the proof of provenance if it's a high-end good. So say you have like a Wagyu beef versus just a regular Jersey cow, you'd want to get more premium money for that Wagyu beef. So if you're able to kind of prove that provenance and prove that history of that animal, you're able to sell it at a higher price point because people have more trust and faith in the data showcasing that. I know we've definitely been facing some interesting challenges in terms of international trade and resource of products. while softwood and lumber and the lack of access to oil and gas exports dominates headlines as well, we definitely do have an issue being able to get our oil and gas products out into the market internationally. We're not able to ship them right now via sea. And then Canada beef and pork are two chief exports with restrictions from China. And we're currently facing challenges with canola getting into China as well. So there's a company out in Canada called Truspix that has been working on supply chain management to be able to prove that proof of provenance and everything that happens along that valued supply chain. Sorry. So let's talk a little bit about the applications as well as the sectors. There's a lot of different applications and sectors that this technology is going to be able to tap into. So you'll see a very interesting wide range of businesses that this is going to be applicable into. So one, manufacturing. And so this is helping to streamline supply chains and the distribution of products. There's a lot of companies working in this right now in terms of being able to help in their supply chain process. So if you have a supply chain, if you're building out a car, right, you're going to have a lot of different parts that make up components to that. And no single company probably makes every single part and component. You're going to have your engine, you're going to have your wheels, your axle systems, your seats, your leather, all these different components. So being able to put blockchain technology and all the different organizations that work in that supply chain, if they're able to input particular data transparently into that blockchain, so the person who's building or manufacturing the car can see exactly where their products are sitting in the supply chain, when they're going to be completed, that they're coming from an authenticated source, things like that. It helps to really streamline that process. They can get their products out on time, on budget. In the agriculture sector, providing very secure traceability. So there's an interesting case study where Walmart in Asia actually started looking at how could they reduce their food recall times. So food recalls can cost companies anywhere from say $5 million and the very extreme end up to $100 million. And it's usually because they can't figure out, say their spinach was recalled, they wouldn't be able to know exactly what batch of spinach that got into what packaging that was sent to what stores. So there's no actual specific. They would just recall the entire batch, 100% of it that was made within a certain period of time. And it can cost a lot of money, and it can also impact consumer health and safety. So if you're someone who ended up getting E. coli tainted spinach, you're going to end up being sick, and that's not very friendly. So being able to take their food recall times down, I believe Walmart was able to do it from 6 days to 2.2 seconds. So the reason they were able to do that is because all the different companies that managed with that supply chain to the point of getting it to the Walmart store were putting their data up into a blockchain. So from the farmer all the way through to the people who would wash it, clean it, bag it, to the distribution, to all the different places that it went to, they were able to see that, and they were able to track it back instantaneously and go, okay, these particular batches were sent to these particular stores, pull everything with this QR code off. So it saved them a lot of money, it saved them a lot of time, and it also helped increase consumer safety, which was fantastic. From financial services, this would probably be one of the largest areas for blockchain technology right now. Everyone's hearing about it from cryptocurrency, you're hearing about it with Bitcoin or Ethereum, NFTs, all the kind of the big buzzwords that come out. But from a enterprise level outside of the cryptocurrency side, it helps create kind of smoother transactions with less administrative and legal costs. So to give an example of where something like a blockchain would benefit, let's just say right now you go to your bank and you're trying to send a wire transfer and you want to send it out to the Cayman Islands. So when you go to your bank, the bank probably has, I think they were telling us it was almost 300 different times that transaction has to get accepted by a different bank, processed forward. The next bank sees that, agrees that they saw that funding, processes that forward. Sorry, my computer is just not even liking me right now. And it costs probably 3 or 4 days to get there. It costs a lot of money, anywhere from $30 to $70 to send that. And if banks were actually able to operate on a blockchain network, the bank in the Caymans would be able to see and go, okay, this bank in Canada, verify they have this amount of money, and it can show up within like an hour versus taking like up to a week and costing a lot of money. So being able to share data like that is also very important. In terms of the cryptocurrency side, being able to send money. So if you want to, send things via Western Union or stuff like that, you have blockchain platforms and cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, where you could send it rather instantaneously and be able to cut out the third-party middlemen. It allows for that peer-to-peer transaction versus using intermediaries like PayPal, stuff like that. So it does create efficiencies. It does help reduce costs. And there's definitely a lot of innovation that's happening in that particular space. Real estate, also really interesting, great case studies there. So it helps building new platforms for asset trading or better verification of property ownership and history. This maybe not like in Canada, North America, places where we have a lot of infrastructure for this, where we have land registries. You go buy a home or you have this land, it's on title. You can see that pretty easily. Sorry. So there was actually a group out in, Africa. So in places in the third world countries where they don't have the same level of infrastructure that we would see here today, if you've been on, sitting on land for generations, your parents had it, and you've been farming on it, you may not have a deed. You may not have any provable legal recourse to say that this is your land. And based on that, like say a group comes in and say, nope, I want your land. They kick you off of it and they take it over. You have no way of proving that that was yours over the person that just came in. Or you don't have access to financial services. Like say you want to be able to get a loan to grow your farm, or you want a micro loan to start a business. If you don't have any proof that you own that land, then you wouldn't be able to leverage that land or get a loan against it to be able to do things like that. So it's definitely prominent in areas of like India, some parts of Asia, parts of Africa where they don't have that level of infrastructure. This place in Africa that processed land titles was very, very slow at it. They were doing about 200 per year. And they implemented a blockchain to try and figure out how they could speed up this land transaction process. And they were able to increase it to, I believe it was 1,000 a year. And that really helped people be able to get that security and gain access to financial services just by being able to utilize a blockchain to verify that information. In terms of legal and accounting, there's definitely a lot of applications here. One in legal, the automating transactions, utilizing the smart contracts that are based on pre-programmed business logic. That helps to kind of cut down on legal fees. Even bookkeeping and other processes can be automated using distributed ledger technology. In oil and gas, it helps improve transactions and simplify automated regulatory reporting. So to give an example, so there's an organization called Guild One. They're out of Calgary, Alberta, and they were one of the first in the world companies to do a blockchain transaction settled through a bank in Canada in the oil and gas space. And what they were able to do is kind of help with that and simplify their transactions. So when companies are producing oil and gas and they're sending it through pipelines, they'll say, okay, we produced this much, it went down the pipeline. And it could take up to 3 months for the pipeline company to come back and say, oh, we think you put in this much. Going back through to try and determine exactly who had the accurate numbers is very time consuming. It's also very costly. It stops companies from getting their royalties on time that help with their cash flows. So what this blockchain did was all the companies that were delivering, their oil through the pipeline, if there was a dispute in numbers, it was brought up immediately and they were able to resolve the dispute that day or within that week. And that helped really speed up that time and transaction processing. They can also, using smart contracts, they can automate being able to do regulatory reporting to governments and things like that. So there was a lot of efficiencies that were gained there. In terms of governments, definitely reducing the high bureaucratic costs and giving opportunities for full information sharing. I know a lot of times it's like certain divisions of government don't communicate with other divisions of government. And I've seen that right even within like the CRA, there's all these different departments and they don't all intercommunicate. They can't all see each other's information. Being able to share information by utilizing a blockchain database where people have, restricted or permission based, and they're able to go in and view that data would definitely be able to create like higher efficiencies. In Saudi Arabia, I believe they were able to reduce, I think it was like 400 million pieces of paper by utilizing a blockchain instead of doing that manual data entry and printing things off. So even an environmental standpoint, being able to upgrade their database and their system, create efficiencies and reduce their environmental burden. And then in terms of energy distribution, optimizing the energy and creating enhanced analytics through better data. So end of the day, again, it's a database. It has a lot of opportunities to create a lot better efficiencies by being able to utilize this database in all these different areas. I know when I first started learning about blockchain, it just seemed very, very overwhelming. It almost seemed like an industry all by itself, standalone. But end of the day, it's a technology very similar to when you hear like IoT or information technologies, where you're connecting with the internet, you're being able to share data, you're being able to create better efficiencies, you're able to do things like remote monitoring or like machine learning that's impacting so many areas of our life right now. So it's a widget and it's a tool. But it's not a standalone solution. It definitely requires more of a holistic look at being able to, like, why would you need to update your database to utilize a blockchain? Where's the value in it? What will it do for you? If you're a standalone business, like a single individual business, you're likely able to just use like Google Drive, right? It's, an efficient way of data sharing, and you're able to give permission to like individual people. If you're looking at sharing information between multiple different counterparties so they can all agree on a similar set of data facts and share better transparency, or executing smart contracts, things like that, then blockchain will make better sense. But if you're kind of like a small business and you don't have a lot of like supply chain management, things like that, maybe financially wouldn't make the best sense for upgrading your database right away. So we've talked about the applications and sectors, but just a little bit of a review. So the three different main applications that this works in, so distributed ledger technologies, or DLT, they are the foundation for business blockchains. And again, it's that immutable database that can be shared within your network and helps to remove redundancies, streamline that data processing, and give all parties access to information. So it is a kind of like that critical component for like that foundation of why blockchain is working within so many businesses. And of course, smart contracts. Smart contracts are, again, blockchain applications that enable self-executing agreements between parties, and it's based on pre-programmed business logic. So basically, parties agree to the terms of a transaction, and the smart contract self-executes once the parameters are met. Things where this would actually be really beneficial. So say if you're in trades and you agree, okay, this is our contract, I'm going to be providing you with this particular service of, say, like building your home. And there's a certain amount of money that's been established as an agreement on this contract. That money would be pretty much held. And the second that person was done their job and was able to prove that they met the terms, then the contract self-executes and settlement happens pretty quickly. So it does help people get paid a lot quicker. It helps with better transparency. And then the other one that's also quite popular is that tokenization. And a token is basically a blockchain-based way of turning an asset, whether it's physical or virtual, into a fractionalized, traceable commodity. Now, part of me, I'm not a big fan of the tokenization part of this. You do not need a token to operate a blockchain. And a lot of people say, oh, Ethereum or Cardano or all these other tokens. There is no blockchain that actually requires a token to operate the platform. Blockchain is the technology and the token is pretty much the product. You want to be very conscientious if you are getting into that space and looking at like purchasing tokens or investing in tokens, things like that. Look at it like it's still a business. Make sure that you do your research and your due diligence, because there is a lot of fraudulent aspects to that tokenized economy. NFTs are a very popular thing that are being talked about right now, non-fungible tokens, but even those, a lot of fraud is being seen in that. And just, be very, very conscientious. If people try to tell you that they need a token to operate their blockchain, or you need to buy this token to interoperate within their blockchain, look at other blockchains that don't require that. There's ones developed through R3 called Corda, which is a very fantastic enterprise level blockchain. You have IBM's Hyperledger. Like, you have a lot of well-established blockchains built by very trusted enterprises that will not try and tell you need a token to operate within their network. So how blockchain enables supply chain. So we talked a little bit about like making sure you could see every aspect and all the different values along that supply chain. So we're going to kind of break it out a little bit further. So as you see, in like with number one, you have a shop, right? So like, let's just say that this is a grocery store, and they want to be able to have a private kind of company internal level blockchain. So they want to be able to, keep better track of their product and their inventory, where things are in their supply chain, et cetera. So they can have more of like that private, permission-based, just shared between a portion of their company. You can have extended, where now you're extending it to like the transport logistics side of things. So you want to know like that, they call it like a geo blockchain or geolocation of your goods, where they're going to get to the distribution facility, how much of that good is going to get to the distribution facility when it's going to get to you. And then you can have the entire end-to-end, from all the way from the farm to where the food is being processed, to the initial distribution facility, to the transport, to the secondary distribution facility, to the shop, all the way to the consumer. And there are companies right now that have blockchains where you can actually see everything. Like specifically, you could scan a QR code and know where your beef came from, where the lettuce in your salad came from, different things like that. Because consumers today are a lot more conscious and aware, where is my food coming from? Is this, genetically modified food? Is there antibiotics in this? Is this organic? A lot of words that are coming out, and people are starting to go, okay, well, what is it? Organic basically is like every single food that's produced is organic. I do find that term kind of funny. Organic realistically just means like I use less chemicals and less pesticides to grow this produce. But people want to know and be aware of that because they're more conscientious of it. So if you're a business and you're in the agriculture space and you want to be able to prove that you have, your chicken is hormone-free and antibiotic-free and raised, being able to go out and green, what do they call that? Free range, stuff like that. All of those different buzzwords, every one of them increases the value of the product that you're selling, but being able to have that traceability and that proof where you could, showcase that, yeah, this is the veterinary records of our animals, or this is the, space and pasture and little timestamp videos of, them being outside, or, just to be able to prove those different pieces out. Consumers will probably appreciate that and go, okay, I'd like to buy this chicken or these eggs based on the consumer practices of this farm versus someone else who's probably doing more of a large factory for it. So that kind of talks a little bit about like that end to end and possibly some value as to why people would want to use blockchain in their agriculture supply chain. So who are some of the biggest spenders on blockchain? Well, of course, banking and financial services are huge. And so just 2 years ago, 1.1 billion was being spent developing new blockchain solutions. And that number is probably almost doubled by today. 2 years later, there's a lot of investment that's been coming out into the space, but banking and finance, definitely some of the biggest aspects of it, because there's a lot of reporting, a lot of regulatory compliances, a lot of legal spend, your anti-money laundering, your know your customer compliances, all those different things. So there's a huge amount of investment that goes into that industry to be able to adopt blockchain. Next would be the manufacturing and resource sector. They're the second largest, and they're more of those traditional industries looking into blockchain, from the agricultural space, the oil and gas energy space, more traditional sectors. And then you have your distribution and services would be third. Your supply chain management, they spent quite a fair bit of money, like over $500 million. And then you have your public service sector, which would be more like your governments, for that. So lots of money and lots of different things being spent. One of I think my favorite things about it really is the collaborative consortiums that are coming out. And there's consortiums in blockchain in just about every different industry that you look at, from insurance to agriculture to oil and gas. And one of the biggest benefits is found at all of these different counterparties they're all looking at adopting, like your competitors are looking at adopting these different technologies. And they want to be able to guard that private data and also, they're going to be facing regulatory and antitrust hurdles to corporations, but being able to join these consortiums and work together on something that's mutually beneficial on technologies that are kind of daunting. Like if you need to update your database, and there's very traditional ways that data has been entered, either paper, writing it down on paper or manually entering different things like that. It's very cumbersome. So learning about some of the challenges that have already been faced and how they overcame them will help you better adopt the technology with less hurdles. So a lot of consortiums, very third-party mediated organizations, very often not-for-profits. I don't think I've met a for-profit consortium yet. And they provide just that neutral ground and structure where companies can come together and collaborate on these issues because they want to get their industry better as a whole. And sometimes it is worth collaborating, even if it is with your competitor to do so. So let's talk a little bit about the industry case studies. This is definitely one of my favorite sections to go through. Oh, sorry. All right, so this is a healthcare study. I know healthcare is definitely a very big topic right now, especially regarding everything to do with COVID. So this company, MTBC, they are patented, they're medical records and are trying to share and access, because there's a lot of high security concerns, right? So you want to make sure that your information is private, it's encrypted, you're only sharing your medical data with like verified professionals. Not everyone gets access to this. But even in, we're in the 21st century, there's still a lot of paper recording that's being used. So, you go to your doctor's office, your chiropractor's office, your dentist's office, all these different medical professionals, and you're manually handwriting in absolutely everything, every single time. And then someone takes that manually handwritten data and then enters it into their computer system. But that data is not being shared. And a lot of times, if say you're having a medical problem, if you had access to 100% of the records, you own those records and you're able to share it with a medical professional, they'd get a very holistic view of what's going on with you from a structural perspective, from like a physiotherapist, chiropractor, massage therapist, your dentist, your naturopath, your family doctor, your blood work, all those different things make up, what's going on with you. And you could have things from years ago that you maybe don't remember that could be relevant to whatever you could be experiencing today. So being able to have a kind of like a streamlined database where you could have ownership and storage of your own medical records in a very secure, encrypted way, it allows the patient to have ownership of the data. Because right now, you put your data, you give your data to your dentist office or any other office, they pretty much own that data, and you have to request for them to share that data. This gives you ownership of your data, and you're allowing them to view it for as long as you choose to give them permission to view your data. So I really like that one because it is important for people to be able to have that knowledge, that safeguard, that privacy, even regarding like vaccination passports or records that could be coming out. It's your choice if you choose to share your medical history with who you choose to share it with, and being able to have that ownership and also be able to display that proof of it's going to be important. So the things that blockchain technology helps with this is, of course, the privacy, because it's a encrypted database with immutable records. No one can just go in and alter your records. Speed, being able to have a shared ledger between organizations or government agencies can dramatically shorten the timeline for like record transfers, right? And then cost. Many healthcare records are still manually administered, and moving to a more digital database definitely significantly reduces errors and cost as well. Because every time you write something, you may or may not remember certain things. You give it to another person, they may or may not enter it correctly. And then by the time the doctor sees it, there's opportunities for, things that have been misplaced or omitted, stuff like that, right? So it gives, more of assurance of accurate data records. And then another healthcare case study, this one is called Hashed Health. So they're using blockchain technology to make important medical worker credentials easier to access. So there's been a huge amount of fraud. We've definitely heard out in the States where people have, created their medical credentials. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want someone claiming to be a surgeon that hasn't actually practiced surgery, giving a surgery to me. So this would help to validate the professional credentials. So organizations like, so say I'm a nurse, I got my RMT and I want to share this with a hospital I was applying for. If the educational institution uploaded my credential to prove that I had it up into that blockchain database, then it could be verified by the organization I'm trying to search a job from, and then that makes sure that whoever is in those positions has the credentials to be actually in those positions, and definitely could streamline hiring process as well as provide that unalterable history of a professional healthcare or their education through it. So if they're doing upgraded classes, anything like that, that can all be in there. And then it kind of does give the patient more security going, okay, I know this professional actually has all of the background and the medical history and knowledge to be able to assist you with your healthcare needs. So we did talk a little bit about this one again, but so Walmart, they've done some really interesting things. I know one, they worked with a company in Canada called DLT Labs, and they got all 60 plus of their logistics companies all operating on a blockchain now. So they have a lot better streamlined for all the distribution and logistics that's happening through Walmart. But this one, what we talked about, this one I think was Walmart in Japan, decided to put their leafy greens, lettuce, spinach, high-risk products for E. coli and salmonella, because there's just been like so many large-scale recalls that have been happening in the States. And each food recall, of course, can cost an incredible amount of money. So being able to take that food recall time down again from the 6 days they had it to the 2.2 seconds was very, very, essential for them to save a lot of money. So they did a very successful 2-year pilot with blockchain tracing becoming mandatory for a lot of the suppliers now. So the one thing about Walmart is they're so large that for them, they're able to go and tell the people who support their supply chain from food to anything, that's like, if you'd like to work with us, you need to use this blockchain database. Where if you're a smaller company, you wouldn't have that same level of leverage. So it might be a little more difficult to get all those different parties to come to the table to agree to upgrade their databases to work with them. So this is kind of where like larger enterprise organizations have kind of a leg up against our smaller players, because they can enforce it if the companies still want to be able to, keep their large contracts with organizations like them. So in terms of supply chain, this one was really interesting. So this was done by Honeywell and GoodDirect. So they manage like very complex supply chains. It's a huge cost for the industry to manage supply chains for sure. They have organizations just dedicated to it, like Supply Chain Canada. So digital ledger systems are a very powerful tool for being able to streamline product tracking. This is now being used to facilitate trade for spare parts in aviation. What's really cool there is you can use their GoDirect platform that's built on IBM's Hyperledger fabric and hosts more than $1 billion in parts for sale. So you can prove your provenance, because if you're doing something in aviation, you need to make sure you're not voiding your warranties. Those planes are millions and millions and millions of dollars and very, very expensive to maintenance. So this allows, if you have a spare part, you can put it on GoDirect, be able to prove the provenance of where you got the material, that it's a good working condition, and you can fully authenticate it through their blockchain. And then you can sell the product or you can buy the product. So it kind of allows for that peer-to-peer transaction, of course, with the instant traceability, because you're using it on a blockchain, you have the information you need from the buyer, or you have the information you need for the seller, and they can instantly know where to arrange for quick shipping and accurate delivery. And of course, fewer expenses, because you're trading directly and you have no need for an intermediary to try and broker a deal, because you're of course going to be paying brokerage fees. So interesting way how Honeywell has been utilizing blockchain technology, but definitely a positive example of it. Another one in supply chain. So this one's called PharmaTrust. And so this one might also interest you guys if you think about like, your vaccinations and things like that are coming out from COVID. So it is a very kind of opaque and complex pharmaceutical supply chain where it leads to areas where blockchain could be quite beneficial. So there is definitely a lot of fraud. I think in this one, I was saying 2014, there was 8.4 million doses of fake drugs and over 10,000 procurement websites that were shut down by Interpol. So if you think of like fraudulent, like could be getting placebos, you want to know if you're getting a medication, you're going to the pharmacy and they're fulfilling that prescription, that you're getting authenticated actual medication and there's no fraud that's happening with it. So being able to use PharmaTrust, they're a US-based company that uses a blockchain application to trace drugs from their point of production through the supply chain all the way to the distribution of patients. So it tracks it throughout the entire origin. So you'd know if anything happened along that supply chain line, if you were getting the real drug or if you were getting the fake one, because you'd want to know if you're getting your COVID vaccination, you're getting the actual one that you've wanted, the Pfizer versus the, what do they call that, Johnson & Johnson. There's so many different ones out there right now. But so this PharmaTrust is user-friendly. So it lets medical providers use a very convenient smartphone to trace their products. Traceability, of course, providing across the entire supply chain. So there's no counterfeit drugs entered into their system. It also helps with expiry warnings, which are good because, if you've ever, even worked at a grocery store, sometimes you're making sure that your products are always current and not going to expire. It's a very cumbersome job. So having that expiry notification warns, oh, time to either push this product forward or remove this product off my shelf to make sure that people are only getting the best of what they're looking for. So that's another area where blockchain can help in terms of supply chain, but also in the healthcare pharmaceutical side. So then agriculture, this one's really cool because Beef Chain was created back in 2019, and it was the very first blockchain-based tracking for its beef, and this was done in Wyoming. And their produce was being delivered to restaurants all the way in Asia. And so they were able to successfully create this digital supply chain tracing technology, and it was co-developed with the University of Wyoming. So it had a consumer app. So you could actually just scan this QR code and let you know the full provenance of the dinner that you were about to eat at the restaurant or at the grocery store. You got certified origins, so you knew full verification of the food product, whether it was organic, whether it was grass-fed, if it was hormone-free, other statuses. So you'd be able to make a conscious choice of what you're about to eat. Simplified shipping as well, so large volumes of shipping information, and major export costs were automatically submitted for the application, and then enhanced RFID. So the tracking was enabled through RFID chips. So if you see the cows usually, or the pros that have tags in their ear, so there was RFID chips that were added to the tags in their ear. And so whenever they would feed the animal, they could just scan the code or for whatever they were feeding, scan the animal's tag. So it was constant real-time data that was being uploaded into the blockchain, vaccination records or antibiotics, everything was put up there. So consumers were able to get a real-time understanding of what it is that they were eating and make the best choice. Another one that's really cool in agriculture. So this one was called Grain Chain. So of course, this is a very ancient farming practice. And it was interestingly a very surprising early adopter of blockchain technology. So it lets farmers cut out intermediaries to be able to trade their products direct to market. So it creates a secure digital record of the provenance of the grain that's being traded. And the platform helps reduce agricultural fraud. So, if you were doing barley over something else, you knew exactly what you were ordering was what you were going to get. And it helped reach the market a lot faster and streamline the infrastructure for supply chain management by letting farmers pay for the service like grain and elevator storage. So it helped to lower the costs. They got direct trade without any intermediaries, because intermediaries are always taking your money. It created more traceability. So orders were immediately traced at every level of the supply chain from point of origin to delivery. And then faster payments. So digital payments are near instant and getting needed capital back to businesses. So and I know that the entire theme we've kept going through is just like the level of efficiency, traceability, consumer trust that is developed through utilizing blockchain technology. So this one's interesting. So this is in FinTech. This company is called Paxos. They are a New York-based innovative digital finance firm that built a blockchain-based infrastructure for the custody and trade of digital assets like cryptocurrencies, or asset-backed coins, and their own unique digital financial products. So they basically were the first trust entity created in New York. And they happened during the financial crisis, and they offered clients digital asset services like bank level oversight. The firm provided a comprehensive exchange and also offered post-trade services on blockchain that automatically reconciled settlements, limiting disputes and errors that were needed for reconciliation. So this one's definitely kind of interesting. They even developed out a gold token, which was the first regulated gold-backed stablecoin, and every token was backed by a traceable ounce of registered gold, or maybe not a full ounce, but whatever equaled up to an ounce on their platform. So in terms of ESG, there's also a lot of talk that's been going on right now about how like blockchain can be used to help with ESG reporting, carbon credits, a lot of things like that. So Mercedes was, I think, one of the first ones to kind of look at that ESG, which was environmental social governance. And they emerged, one of their main business concerns across the world was, how much emissions and how sustainable are they? Utilizing blockchain provided this unbroken chain of provenance through the supply chain and created opportunities for environmental certifications as well as compliances. So they took the lead in developing a pilot for it and tracking their GHG emissions throughout the entire manufacturing supply chain for their battery cells specifically. And they were given a source of validation for electric vehicles and what their environmental rating actually was. They partnered with a startup that specialized in blockchain technology for industrial supply chains. And the project was initially focused on just a single battery cell manufacturer. And if successful, they're going to expand it to other parts of their vehicle components. They've been working to launch a large range of carbon neutral cars in less than 20 years, which require more accurate understanding of the process. So this one's nice because they'll be able to report and give consumers confidence. Like if you're looking to buy a electric vehicle and you believe that using electricity is a lot cleaner than operating off of hydrocarbons, you want to know exactly like what is the emissions rating, how impactful is it to the actual environment, and this will give consumers more confidence in when they're purchasing a vehicle, at least from Mercedes. So this is a local company to Calgary. This is Guild One. So in 2019, this was a blockchain, I think it was, the OOC, it's the Oil and Gas Consortium. And they announced it had awarded a contract for developing a proof of concept for a blockchain system for balloting. And the oil and gas industry uses AFE ballots to approve capital and expense allowing to determine working interest of companies participating in projects under the joint operating agreement. The blockchain can help to automate the data reconciliation and digitize many processes. The proof of concept was a success, opening new opportunities for blockchain use in the energy sector, which is really cool. So, conventional AFE balloting is very manually intensive and largely paper-driven process, and significant time was able to reduced, and better results were given by taking this balloting digital. Here's an interesting one many people might have thought about, but in the commerce sector, when you think of travel industry, so back in the day, a lot of us, well, depends on how old you are, but we used to have like actual brick and mortar stores where you could go in and you could book your your trip, so your flight, your hotel, your car rental. It was an individual person as a travel agent who had studied to be a travel agent who would, navigate that entire complex system to be able to get you exactly where you want to go and at what time. And then all of a sudden it started going more digital. So the more the internet came out, so you have your Expedia and your Travelocity and all of these like major industries or organizations. And it's actually 83 billion a year that consumers spend across like airlines and airports and hotels and, tour operation, all these kind of things. It's huge. So Travelport partnered with IBM using their Hyperledger Fabric to build a solution for processing commissions that were owed to these travel organizations by like hotels and airlines and different things like that. So when you go and you make a purchase through their service, right, reconciliation was definitely required with high administration costs. So if there was a change, a cancellation, anything like that, it could be an cumbersome process trying to go back and forth. So when they used blockchain to do this, there was a lot of better tracking. So by using it, they were able to have a full history of bookings, a verifiable history of bookings, including real-time accounts, any modifications, cancellations, and that definitely reduced disputes and lengthy reconciliation times. And then speed by having a shared ledger between the hotels, as what like airlines, booking agencies, dramatically shortened that timeline for commission payments. So both parties were able to verify the data and go, all right, you've done what you said. This person did, their hotel stay, whatever it was. Here's your commission for having them book through us. And then that digitization, most consumer bookings are now made online. I don't even think I've seen a brick and mortar travel agency in a long time, but many hotel processes are still manual. So moving to a digital database definitely significantly reduced operational costs. So that's a pretty interesting one just in travel, that we all want to get back to traveling at some point. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the opportunities as well as the obstacles that we see in this industry. So we're going to go through some of the business value cases, and then of course the challenges to adoption. So blockchain has it is still new. Okay. So the technology's been around since 2009. Enterprise level adoption really only started happening maybe 5 years ago. And so it's kind of still in an R&D phase. It's not perfect yet, but it does have a proven track record of lowering operational costs to businesses, removing the need for expensive reconciliation, double work, and intermediaries. So there is a proven track record of that. We definitely have seen a lot of case studies with evidence towards it. Technology has demonstrated the ability to track products to their point of origin within seconds, and smart contracts have definitely streamlined transactions by fully automating the process with programmable business logic. And then some of the challenges to adoption that we've seen, main benefits, large scale involving a number of counterparties facilitating collaboration among competitors. There's usually a hurdle for competitors to want to work with each other. Market currently offers so many blockchains. It's actually really confusing. Like, where do you even go? Where do you start? It's overwhelming for a lot of people to figure out what to do and how to integrate it into their system. And then specifically in the financial services sector, we in Canada do not have a lot of regulatory clarity. There's a lot of uncertainty on even how legal enforceability is going to work. And there's just a limitation towards being able to have a speed of implementation for getting your blockchain or your token, your exchange off the ground in the financial services sector. So those are some of the things like where it has business value, and then some of the challenges that people are seeing towards adopting it. So some of the future developments for it, business optimization, according to Gartner, the primary benefit of blockchain technology within at least 5 years is the ability to help optimize business systems and create cost savings efficiencies. So blockchain will be able to automate a wide range of business processes, including payments, contracts, data management. Industries like manufacturing, resource, healthcare, many others will experience greater optimization. And then for some tokenization and digital asset marketplaces will enable companies to do more cost-effective fundraising. That one may take a little time because it really depends on how the regulators allow for these companies to operate within that space. But they do believe it'll generate over 3.1 trillion in new business value just by 2030 alone. But with the technology set to be ready to go mainstream adoption, likely in about 2 years from now, organizations are definitely starting now to explore how to adopt it, how to streamline their businesses. And of course, digital synergies. So we see a lot of synergies between machine learning, Internet of Things, global markets. Again, blockchain is just a single tool. It's a widget. It definitely has opportunities to health, but as you've seen, even in, say, the agriculture ones, you still need IoT. You're going to need those sensors. You're going to need technologies that are going to communicate with the internet to be able to collect the data in real time. And also you want to be very conscientious. What do you want to put into a blockchain? What do you want to put into something that's immutable? And if you're collecting all of these reams of data, you're likely going to want to use machine learning to be able to tag that data, scrub that data, clean that data, make that data into something that's very usable, right? So when you're thinking about updating your database or utilizing blockchain technology, it's not the here all end all be all. It's not the only answer, but it is definitely a component that can help create a lot better efficiency. So that is the end of our class. Thank you so much for attending today. We do teach these classes every single month. So if you sign up for our newsletter, if you go on canadablockchain.ca, you'll be able to keep up to date with all the classes. If you guys have any questions about this class, you're welcome to email us at info@canadablockchain.ca. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, we're happy to do that as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you've really enjoyed this class, and I hope you join us again in the future.